Going through the pages of my life is like gathering the leaves that have fallen down the tree. For my world was as fragile as the dry leaves that gather at the base of the tree. It could be crushed with the force of a fist, if not for the divine powers that have protected me. It's the story of a man who has seen much, fallen to the depths of deprivation, and risen to live again and tell his tale. I certainly was not born to the life of a katakali artiste. I was carried there by the currents of life. Memories of my first tryst with destiny remain afresh. As a young boy, I never realized that these would be the defining moments in my life. The moments that would turn me into Kalamandalam gopi. I was a mere child when my mother died. I was born to a land where paddy fields flourished, but not enough to feed the mouths of souls like me, into a family where poverty and starvation were our demons. My mother and aunt worked in a house where my father was the caretaker. My mother favored me over my brothers, perhaps because I was the youngest. Her eyes would soften at the sight of me. But everything was not quite right. The first time I sensed my mother was sick was when I saw her walking back from work. I saw her looking at me. Suddenly, she crumpled down on the earth in agony. As I rushed to her, a fleeting thought passed my mind. I knew she was slipping from my life, and it made my heart ache. Though my grandmother and aunt tended to her, her health continued to deteriorate. Loneliness was a part of my life. I had no real friends to play with or talk to. It is in such moments of loneliness that my mother's demise hit me the most. Even today, I can feel the scorching heat of the burning pyre as I tried to get closer. My mother was gone forever. From then, my story was, in a sense, dominated by this aching loneliness and self-introspection of who I was and whom I truly belonged to. Perhaps in such moments, I could relate with the great warrior Karna, a role I would learn to perfect in later life. The man who was born a noble descendant, but had to lead a life of loneliness and humiliation, but for one mistake on his mother's part. How he suffered taunts and curses all through his life to get recognition only after his death. It was a role that seemed like an extension of my own role in this world. Perhaps like him, I was destined to lead a life of constant suffering before I would be redeemed. That night we went hungry, my brothers and me, and feelings of emptiness consumed me. But I knew this too would fade away. Just like the angry flames that would die down and become embers and finally just ashes to become a part of this earth. The renowned Padmashree Kalamandalam started Tulal classes on the behest of Kodira Manikal's Tamburan. He told my father that he would pay for the expenses and insisted that I should join. I was only 8 years old then. My father pulled me out of school and made me join the class. Not out of choice, but glad that there would be one less mouth to feed. On my part, it was not my aptitude for dance, but the fact that I needed to obey my father. Thus, my journey into the world of classical dance began, one that would not be as aesthetic as it sounds. Teaching in those days was different. Our gurus took refuge in canes and their palms to discipline students. At Pushpakamana, a few children like me underwent rigorous training for Tulal while we stayed there. The sad moments of being away from home, added to the harsh teaching methods, made me want to escape from it all. Our teacher was very strict. Once he beat me so hard that there were bruises all over my body. When I returned home, my aunt, seeing the marks on my body, was livid. Being short-tempered, she immediately rushed to Ashan and shouted at him. He remained calm. In anger, she flung the stick that he used for rhythm on the floor. The next day, he behaved normally. This was an example of the teacher's need to perfect students without harboring any ill feeling towards them. He prepared me well for some stage performances.
തുള്ളൽ പഠിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന കാലത്ത് ഞങ്ങളുടെ ചിറക്കിൽ തേവരുടെ അമ്പലത്തിൽ അവിടെ ഈ ഉത്സവകാലങ്ങളിൽ പ്രത്യേകിച്ചും വാരം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടൊന്നുണ്ട്. അത് നടക്കൽ പതിവുണ്ട്. അതായത് വാരം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ബ്രാഹ്മണർക്ക് സദ്യ.
While I was studying Tulal, there was a festival at the Shiva temple, during which they would treat the Brahmins to a feast. Since there was hardly any food at home, I went to the temple, hoping to have some of the leftovers from the feast. It was late in the night, and I waited with a rumbling stomach for a morsel of God's food. I was tired and sleepy. I dozed off. When I woke up with a start, I realized that it was pitch dark, and I was alone. The only sound I could hear was what seemed like a rogue elephant dragging on broken chains. Intense fear filled my heart, and I ran for my life.
കുട്ടിക്കാലം മുതലൊക്കെ കൂട്ടുകൂടിയിട്ട് ബീഡി വലി പഠിച്ചിരുന്നു. ആ ബീഡി വലി വലിക്കണം എന്ന് ആഗ്രഹമുണ്ട്, വാങ്ങിക്കാൻ കാശുമില്ല.
When the Tulal classes closed down, I was back home. It was a time when I picked up certain bad habits like smoking. I liked smoking beedies, but at the same time I did not have the money to buy it. I got into the habit of picking up discarded stubs and smoking them. It gave me a sense of being an adult and a man. It was a lovely feeling then. the Tambaran's advice, I was sent to the sprawling Nari to join Kathakali classes. This huge traditional house had 16 traditional quadrangles and separate bathing ponds for men and women. The master of this house was known as Achan Tambaran. Everyone spoke of him very highly. He had a powerful personality and did not differentiate between classes. He was known to be a Kathakali lover. When I walk towards the house, I see Achan Tambaran sitting on his armchair, a betel leaf box by his side. As he opens the betel box, he sees me and beckons. He reads the letter that Tambaran has sent and asks his caretaker to bring the Kathakali crown. He asks me to wear it and show a few steps. As the crown is fitted on my head, I feel a strange vibration. It's as if the crown was ordained for me. I proceed to show him a mudra of the beauty of a lotus. As he watches me, he seems pleased. He asks the caretaker to take me inside. And thus, a new chapter in my life starts.
നാരേരി മനിക്കിൽ കഥകളി പഠിക്കാൻ ചേർന്നിട്ട് പഠിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഒരു ദിവസം കൃമീരവത്തിൽ കൃഷ്ണൻ ചൊല്ലിയാടാണ്. ആ ചൊല്ലിയാടുന്ന സമയത്ത്
Once, when our teacher, Rawuni Ashan, was teaching us Choliatam in Kramirawadam in Nari Mana, he lost his temper and took the arrow that was lying around and started beating me mercilessly. Only when Achan Tambaran intervened did he finally stop. Back in the room, I was filled with anger and humiliation at being thus insulted in front of the other boys. I knew I had only two choices, either to commit suicide or run away. Finally, I left the house and walked for a long time in the sun. I concluded that the world of dance was not meant for me. I heard they were recruiting people for the army. So I decided I would take a boat to go there. I only had a coin with me. My eyes skimmed the ripples on the river. Seeing no sign of the boat, I was even more upset. Dejected, I sat down on the bench. The man who ran the tea shop next to it offered me some steamed tapioca. Feeling hungry, I reached out for the coin to pay him, but he refused. As I ate, he asked where I was going at this hour. Hearing what I said, he advised me that the world of dance was better than the army and that I should return home. I felt relieved listening to him speak so soothingly. I felt some hope in my mind, but also embarrassed at how I would face Achan Tambaran. Arjun Tambaran was walking about, and the moment he spotted me, he asked me, "Where were you, son? We were looking all around for you." Seeing my silent, repentant face, he asked Tamparati to take me inside. And thus I returned to the world of Kathakali again. Many a time have I reached such crossroads, and an unknown hand has gently pulled me back to my destiny. There were frequent performances held at Nari Manor. Arjun Tambaran used to invite famous artists to perform. Once, the eminent Kalamandalam Krishnan Nair was invited to perform. People spoke of him in hushed whispers, and I knew I would be seeing someone truly great. I tried to get a glimpse of him applying makeup. Suddenly, he turned around and spotted me. His piercing glance frightened me. The sheer aura of his presence created a sort of anticipation in the audience as they waited with bated breath to see him perform. He appeared as Arjuna in Santana Gopalam, and I was fascinated. There and then, I decided that I would follow in his footsteps. The green makeup signified characters of gentle, noble, and heroic nature. He continued to inspire me as I oscillated from characters of grey shades back to noble characters. But this sort of enjoyment of seeing such fine actors would not last long. Within a year, the school closed down, and we returned to our homes.
നാരേരി പനിക്കിലത്തെ കഥകളി നിർത്തിയതിന് ശേഷം ഞാൻ നാട്ടിൽ വെറുതെ ഇരിക്കുകയായിരുന്നു. അതായത്
It was rather strange, but it seemed as if I had descended from the abode of the gods to earth, and the problems of the earthly being. It was during this phase of life that I acquired one more habit that would shake the very foundations of my life. It happened when I was helping my father water the plants in the garden at the house where he worked. An old friend, Odat Gopi, came and helped me to water the plants. He told me that he had brought something for me to taste, some toddy. Petrified at the prospect, I refused, but another part of me was egging me to try it out. Thus, he poured the toddy onto a coconut shell as we sat on the branches of the mango tree. It tasted bitter first, then it felt good, and I seemed to enjoy it. It was as if the serpent had raised its head and I was a willing victim.
ഞാൻ 1951 കലാമണ്ഡലത്തിൽ വിദ്യാർത്ഥിയായിട്ട് ചേരാൻ ചെല്ലുമ്പോൾ അവിടെ പ്രധാന അധ്യാപകനായിട്ട് രാമൻകുട്ടി നായർ.
When I was 13, things took a dramatic turn. I was given the opportunity to join Kalamandalam, which lay in the banks of Bharatapuyar, a dream created by the great poet Wallathol, who conceived of Kalamandalam as the temple of all classical art forms of Kerala. The statue of Walatol looms high, as if looking forever at the legacy he has left behind.
Namaste Gadadarsha Namaste Gadadarsha.
And I pay my respects to this great man. My first memory of this great person was of a tall and well-built man with black round glasses holding a walking stick. Ramankuti Ashan took me to him, and as the great poet looked at me, I felt like Bhima cowering in front of Hanuman, who attained Vishwarupam in Kalyana Saugantikam. We don't need to audition him like the others, he told Ramankuti Ashan. You can admit him. My formal education in Kathakali thus started at the feet of Ramankuti Ashan. As I handed the betel leaves to Ashan and bowed before him, I knew from this point that there was no turning back. Ramankuti Ashan never smiled. When he walked to the dining area, he would walk with his head held high, a bunch of keys in one hand and a pot of ghee in the other. Tough outside, but soft within. With the start of the monsoons, we underwent a grueling oil massage that was painful but essential to make our bodies firm and pliable. It was as if our bodies went through a clothes wringer. After massaging 5 to 6 students, the heat in Ashan's feet had to be massaged out by the students. This massage was done thrice a year when it rained, but for us students it would seem a lifetime, and it was at this stage that many students would opt out. Our day would start at 2:30 in the morning, when we would have our bath and prepare for eye exercises. They would put oil in our eyes. Then we would start practice by standing on our toes and jumping high. Next, we practiced foot and hand movements. In other words, all these exercises would perfect our performance on stage. When we were free, I was often punished for playing pranks, one of which I remember rather vividly. I was sitting with my friend when a man entered our campus. I wanted to show off. I asked the man if he had a light. He just said no and walked off. Little did I realize the implications. The next day, during class, I realized he was our newly appointed teacher, Padmashree Naya Ashan. He was teaching us Kichakawadam dance. I was to perform to the song Harinakshi, where I had to imitate Sairendri, who walks in with a vessel in her hand. As I practiced, there was something that irritated him. I could see his face changing. He made me repeat it. Finally, he took a stick and hit me till my skin broke and started bleeding. I looked at him in sheer anger and he said, "That was how Sairendri is supposed to look at Kichakan." I felt sad and humiliated. Suddenly, I saw Ashan come and sit near me. For a moment, I was scared he was going to scold me again. But I saw tears in his eyes, and I knew he cared for me and wanted me to excel in what I did. And even today, when I perform in Kichakawadam, his words remain in my mind. Though I never get to play Sairendri anymore, I was always Kichakan. Perhaps it was the need to show off, or even experiment, that landed me in a lot of problems with my superiors. Once I decided to set the old clock that hung in the mess right by repairing it. It never worked, and used to be a constant source of irritation for me. So I took it in a quiet corner of the hostel and dismantled it. When I finally put it back, some parts remained behind. The news reached my teacher's ears, and I was severely punished for it. Similarly, I was made to carry a door on my head as punishment for breaking the door to the washroom. This was something my friends had done, but the blame fell squarely on me. Thus, my life in school passed, with some sweet and some bitter memories. Some years later, after I graduated, I was absorbed as a teacher at Kalamandalam. This was followed by my marriage to my cousin, Chandrika. It was a period of complete bliss. Like many other things that I learned much later, she would be my partner in the true sense of the word. A whole new world opened up with the arrival of our two sons, Jayan and Raghu, and for the moment, my life did not seem so turbulent. During this period, gloom fell over Kalamandalam as the great poet Wallatol passed away. Before he died, he called Ramankutti Ashan and Padmanabhan Ashan to his side. He said that the responsibility of looking after Kalamandalam lay in their hands henceforth. Much of what Kathakali is today can be attributed to great personalities like Wallatol and MKK Nair, who was more like an ambassador for Kathakali. He refined Kathakali costumes and even adapted English plays such as Dr. Faustus into Kathakali. The artists, knowing of MKK Nair's fondness for Kathakali, would often communicate with him through mudras. On my part, I owe great people like him for putting our dance on the world stage, for which we are respected by everyone. Meanwhile, Kalamandalam was growing in stature and its name spreading abroad, as more students began to join the various classes in Chenda, music and Mandalam. The Chenda is a cylindrical drum that is hung around the neck and played with 2 sticks, while the Mandalam is a drum that is played with the hands. Both of them form an indispensable part of Kathakali and takes years to master. As the word spread around, more foreign students began coming to learn the arts and mastering it, and carrying the culture with them back to their countries. This was also a period when I started to enjoy the fruits of my labor. I was invited to perform with the great legend Kalamandalam Krishnan Nair. This was the ultimate compliment, but unknowingly, a certain arrogance grew within me, and for some time I forgot the ones who were dear to me, to wallow in my pride. Foolish and vain, like the envious Pushkaran, Nalan's cousin, who in his arrogance banishes Nalan and his wife Damayanti from the kingdom, I played Pushkaran and Kalamandalam Krishnan Nair played Nalan.
മദ്യം കഴിക്കൽ തുടങ്ങിയെന്ന് മാത്രമല്ല അത് ഇല്ലാതെ പറ്റില്ല എന്നുള്ളൊരു നിലവാരമാണ്.
My drinking habits became worse. Perhaps, as they say, pride comes before a fall. I began drinking on the sly before performances, thinking it would carry me through the long hours of waiting and sleepless nights. I never knew that I was getting into this vicious cycle from where there would be no escape. This habit became worse as it was easy to get drinks. When we went to perform, Kathakali lovers would provide us with drinks to please us. So, like slow poison, it entered my system and remained there. Sometimes I would perform in a stupor and would have to be taken out. As a result, people stopped calling me for performances, and whatever money I had was spent on drinks. I became a slave to it. Slowly, it destroyed and alienated me from my dear ones. And I descended from the Deva Logam to the Asura Logam. In other words, from the abode of the gods to the house of the demons. When I returned home in the drunken stupor, I would be penniless, having spent all my money on drinks. At work, people were talking about my behavior, and at home, my wife's despair was more than I could bear. I threatened her that if she spoke to me in this manner, she would never get to see me again. My heart thudded as I shut the door and reached out for the sleeping pills. I swallowed a whole lot of them and fell on the bed. In the background, I could hear my wife calling out to me. But I was too tired to care, and I wanted to escape from this hell of my own creation. As I slipped into a daze, I could hear Padmanabhan Ashan calling me to wake up, and I found myself changing persona and becoming calm as his voice soothed me. His words felt like the first rain that falls after a parched summer, and I pushed myself to get up. As I opened the door, I fell into his arms, and from there I don't remember much, but I was rushed to the hospital where I was treated. In 1991, I stopped drinks completely. In fact, I stopped smoking and chewing betel leaf as well. In order to prove myself, I began taking more challenging roles, such as Bahugan in Nalacharitam, Karna, and the comic Kartalan in Nalacharitam, which is a negative role. Such roles were received well by the audience, and I began to feel reassured again. Over the years, my life in Kalamandalam remains a good memory. I was soon promoted to the post of a principal in 1961. I considered it my immense luck to have graduated from a student to a teacher and now to the principal of this prestigious institute. As the principal, the main challenges that lay in front of me was how to preserve the traditional Gurukula Sampradaya, the ancient Indian education system based on residential tutelage, alongside the old traditional art forms. I also made some changes in the administration, which would make work rather streamlined, since I knew the kind of problems students and teachers underwent from my own experience.
എൻ്റെ കൂടെ എന്തിനും എല്ലാ കാര്യങ്ങൾക്കും എൻ്റെ വിഷമതകൾക്കും മാത്രമല്ല വേറൊരു കാര്യം എന്താ വെച്ചിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ എനിക്കൊരു ഈ ദേഷ്യപ്പെടലൊക്കെ ഈ മദ്യപാനം കൊണ്ടുള്ള ദേഷ്യപ്പെടലായിരുന്നു. എങ്കിലും അതൊക്കെ മറന്ന് എനിക്ക് എന്ത് വന്നാലും ഒരു തലവേദന വന്നിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ എന്നെ ശുശ്രൂഷിക്കാനും എല്ലാത്തിനും മുൻകൈയെടുത്ത് എൻ്റെ ഒപ്പം തന്നെ നിൽക്കുന്ന ഒരു.
Over the years, I realized that nothing can be greater than the human bond. For me, it was my wife, Chandrika. If not for her, perhaps I would have given up a long time back. She remained calm and kind and never made me feel guilty for any of my actions. I remember how she cared for me when I underwent the most tortuous moments of my life, when I had an operation for slipped disc. The doctors warned me that my career as a dancer may come to an end. I suppose, having had to wear heavy costumes weighing nearly 15 kilos and turning around during dance aggravated my back problems and finally led to this stage. Absolutely dejected at my own incapacity, I did not know why God was testing me so. Kathakali was my only source of income, and if I could no longer dance, it meant I would die a pauper. It is with such intense doubts that I prayed at Guruvaya temple. Suddenly, I saw a small child offering me some bananas. I took it and he ran away. After praying, when I looked around for him, I could not find the child, and I suddenly realized what the Lord had in store for me. I promised Lord Krishna that I would do my first performance in front of him in Guruvaya, and I did 6 months later. Among the roles that I have played in Guruvaya Auditorium was that of Balabhadran in Subhadra Haranam, where I return in anger to confront Krishna for helping our sister elope with Arjuna. How Krishna pacifies Balabhadran, and they dance together in happiness.
എൻ്റെ 60-ാം പിറന്നാളുണ്ടായത്. അത് ഗുരുവായൂർ വെച്ചിട്ടായിരുന്നു. അത് അതിഗംഭീരമായ തോതിൽ തന്നെയായിരുന്നു. അന്ന് പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് എടുത്തു പറയാനുള്ളത്.
Memories of my 60th birthday celebrations at Guruvaya remain sweet on my lips. Ramankuti Ashan presented me with the golden crown of Krishna, while Padmanabhan Ashan gave me a Veera Shringala, and I was weighed on the temple scales before my performance. Among the accolades that I received was the prestigious Padmashree Award. At every stage, the adulation that I received from eminent personalities and the audience has been awesome. Thus, I made peace with my conscience, my family, and my profession. I had achieved what I had set out to do, and travelled all around the world to spread the message of our culture and heritage. And if you were to ask me which role I have become famous for and invited to perform the most, without batting an eyelid I would say, it's the role of Raudra Bhima, which Kalamandalam Krishna Naya had perfected, and which I learned to master. It's a role where I change persona right from the time I enter the green room and apply my makeup, where I become the roaring lion in search of his prey, Dushasana, in the battlefield in Kurukshetra, and change to the tender lover at the sight of Draupadi, and finally to the pious devotee at Lord Krishna's feet, where I sacrifice my ego in order to be redeemed.
നിടച്ചിന്നു കൊല്ലാതയച്ചിട നിടച്ചിന്നു കൊല്ലാതയച്ചിട പറഞ്ഞതു പണ്ടടാ നിന്നുടെ
Thus, as I change masks, many a time the mask and I have become one. But today, I am a changed man, but this does not matter, for my role is merely to entertain you. Everything else remains a secret, locked within me.